Octopussy is when our vagina or our yoni actually feels like a million fingers and tongues on a man's penis or vajra during intimacy. I was teaching a group of people all about this, how this worked, in intimacy. And one of my friends looked at me and said, so basically, my vagina turns into an octopussy because I was doing this with my hands, hence the name Octopussy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Returning our yoni, our vagina, our sexual organs back in to the alive being that she's meant to be. So for millennia, in much of the world, a woman's vagina was treated like a cylinder, right? That a penis just simply went in and out of until they were excited enough to ejaculate and babies were born. In this scenario, you want it to be tight. The more friction, the better. Not friction, but the more pressure, the better. And that way, the man would be satisfied sooner. And of course, with time, women realized that, wow, we could also have pleasure. But very often, after having many, many years of this very hard pounding sex, or she wasn't really ready and all that, the walls of the vagina become very hardened. They become armored in the same way that a fighter will become desensitized to a punch. The walls of the vagina become very desensitized to any kind of pleasure possible. But the reality is that a woman's vagina and all of her sexual organs are meant to come alive during intimacy. They're an entirely beautiful, wonderful field of pleasure that have nothing to do with this pounding energy of procreative sex. This is what we're going to talk about today: how to return our yoni to her original state of octopussy. So, in tantric circles, we often talk about the vagina as yoni. Now, yoni has many beautiful meanings, but essentially, yoni doesn't just consider the vagina. She actually considers all of the organs. Because imagine that all of these are connected and they all have nerve endings and they all have pleasure within them. So they actually are all acting through the walls of the vagina. So from now on, I'm going to say yoni. And also, I'm going to call the man's penis vajra, which means thunderbolt. And this is very important because when we shift from the procreative style of sex where the man's penis is just a battering ram and the woman's vagina is just a cylinder, it's a very interesting thing when she's actually yoni and he is a thunderbolt. And suddenly he comes in, and while she's doing this, he is feeding energy into the feminine. This is a whole other world than just that simple procreative model of I'm just going to get off and whatever. This is an entire experience. So we're going to talk about Yoni and Vajra. So I first discovered this. I'd been studying Tantra for some time, and I decided to go away with my husband to Jamaica. And we were going to explore this, how Tantra fit into sexual intimacy. Because, of course, this isn't really what Tantra is. Tantra is a philosophy all about living in oneness with the world, with God, with everything. And of course, when we bring that into our intimacy, magic is possible. So I wanted to explore what this was like, but I didn't want to be teaching, right? I didn't want to be like, here's what you have to do next. Oh, no, you're not doing that right, right? That would completely kill the mood. And the truth is, I was new to it. I didn't know what to expect. It was kind of like deep in my heart, as I suppose you also know this already too. You knew more is possible, but you didn't quite know how to get there. And that was me. So our only rules for intimacy were that we were going to explore the polarities within our bodies. which basically are that in the woman, the heart is positive and the yoni is negative, which means if you imagine a magnet, the energy comes out here and comes in through the yoni. And in the man, it's opposite, right? He receives through the heart and he gives through the vajra. So we were going to explore those polarities and we were going to explore non-ejaculatory sex. We're just going to take it off the table and see what lovemaking became without it. I go into a lot of detail about this whole journey in Jamaica and what happened and the revelation that happened there in my book, Tantric Intimacy. But for the sake of this video, at one point, I was on top and my focus was to relax my yoni as much as possible in order to honor the polarity that if this was my positive pole, this was sort of the active pole, my yoni had to be the relaxed pole, the receiving pole, the negative pole in that it drew things to it, but it wasn't active. And I could tell that she was very active because I was very used to trying to be small, like trying to be really tight. So I consciously had to release, 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 relax. He also had to stay very still and not be pounding, right? Which is why it was much easier because I was on top. And we did this many times over the week. And sometimes I had a lot of tears as Yoni healed, right? As she released trauma and all that kind of thing. But then one day I was on top. She was much easier to relax. It was much easier for her to flow. And then all of a sudden, my husband's eyes became like wide like this because in the top of the vagina, she had actually grabbed the head of his penis. That's what he said it feels like. That's what. And then the walls of my vagina started doing this to the shaft of his vajra. I was not doing this. She was doing this. It was almost like the magnetic dance between the masculine and feminine. And my sense of what happens when the vajra is pulled deep in and then clamped, and whether it's a full magnetic thing that once she actually becomes fully negative, it's like, filings to a magnet. And then something clamps. She clamps around that head to hold him still. And then it's like literally like she's caressing him. And it's a very interesting dance with your partner because this is very stimulating for the male partner. But that is a whole other discussion. So she is now doing this. Imagine what this feels like in your body. So your yoni is now completely relaxed and she is moving like this. This is your root chakra. Imagine the nerve endings flowing, through your body, the energy channels flowing up from that first chakra. This is what I was referencing when I said an orgasmic experience. Because when this starts to happen, you literally have to breathe deeper to allow this energy to flow through you because it's quite overwhelming because you're not doing it. The magic of our body is doing it. The magic of our spirit, our transcendental self. Who knows what it is? We don't have words for it. But this is where lovemaking can go to an entirely new level. And the journey of lovemaking isn't about ejaculating. It's about exploring these interesting sensations and seeing if we can relax deeper into the sensation so that we can actually experience different levels of pleasure, subtle levels of pleasure. And this changes everything. And for the male partner, it also changes everything because they are now processing a kind of pleasure that is very, very different because you're now in union. And the vajra and the yoni start to feel as one. And so you are now experiencing both pleasure. No longer is it my pleasure, your pleasure, I come, you come. You are now energetically united And this is happening. And what's interesting is it's a combination of the feminine and that masculine energy, that thunderbolt, that lightning energy entering the feminine body. And the circuit closes. And now something new happens between both of you, which is where we experience this wonderful, deep tantric intimacy that is sort of promised, that if you study Tantra, you will have these incredible orgasmic states that can last for hours and hours, all this kind of thing. But it's within this union, because this is where time can bend. Very different experiences happen there. But for us as women, this experience of Octopussy just changes everything. We get to experience the pleasure that deep down we always knew was possible right from the first time we ever made love. So what can you do now? Going forward, how do you experience Octopussy in your love life? Now, obviously, I have a course in this, shocker, called The Power of the Divine Feminine in Intimacy, and the link is in the caption. But right now, what can you do? The first thing you want to do in lovemaking is relax. If you want to explore the feminine, whatever you do, relax. Release your mind. This is where you can use all the meditation and yoga you do to bring yourself into a relaxed state. The feminine receives, the masculine gives, the feminine surrenders, the masculine leads. And again, if these are all new topics to you, definitely check out the other videos in this channel and find out more about the divine and lovemaking, things like that. But the key is that if we want to flow in the feminine and have this Octopussy experience throughout our bodies, we want to relax. We need to go into the negative and allow our partners to be in the masculine. And this is no small journey. This may require healing trauma. This may require voicing our truth so that we feel safe. The ability to relax is easy to say, but it's a journey all unto itself. But that's the first step. The second step is playing with the polarities in the body. That the heart, the breasts are the positive, and the yoni is the negative. So that means that we stimulate this. This is what actually activates yoni. If the breasts are stimulated, if our heart is full because we've been wooed and there's been chivalry and beautiful things happen, our heart opens, which stimulates yoni. So to play in the polarities starts to bring that relaxation into the body, into understanding that more. When you are actually in intercourse, ask your partner not to pump, because that will require yoni to stay in the masculine, stay in the positive, so she is defending herself. If the masculine slides in and instead of pumping, rocks their hips, but stays connected, then yoni can start to relax because she knows she's not going to be hit, and I'm not saying there's a time for that. It can be very, very exciting. This is just one possibility in all the possibilities. But if they can, and some men really struggle with that because they're afraid of losing their erection, which is fine, because it's sort of natural that if we're used to actually having very quick sex, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that, well, they want to be hard the whole time. But this is different. If you want to make love for an hour or longer, it may go up, it may go down, it doesn't matter. It's not the same. And also, when he goes in, if she locks onto him, he doesn't actually want to be super hard, because when this starts to happen, he's much more sensitive when he's kind of semi-hard. But again, this is a journey between you and your partner. It is not something that happens right away, and it's not even something you can guarantee will happen once you even know how to do it. And it's a very fun journey. So that's the third part, that he simply tries to press in without going in and out, but rocking hips instead to kind of keep the energy flowing, but not breaking contact with you so Yoni can relax. And then, of course, the final thing is letting her relax in that, even with a vajra inside. This might be easier when you're on top, that you have more control, right? He's sort of solid on the floor, and you're on the bed, and you can kind of control that. Or maybe you would rather be on your back so that you can sort of feel your spine grounded and you can relax. But again, he just has to be very careful that he doesn't move in and out. And if he does, maybe it's very slowly, almost like massaging her, right? This is very different because this journey for both of you will be an entire resensitization of Yoni and Vajra. But the end result is Octopussy, which creates an orgasmic state in both of you. So thank you for being here. Definitely check out some of the other videos here that are all about lovemaking, about the masculine and feminine. And if you're interested in diving deeper into this, definitely check out my course that's in the captions. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.